Where did you come from?
Our friends from Massachusetts are waiting in
I work for the company, DNS Supply.
All right, here they're going. If you can't hear me, please let me know. But we don't want to waste a second of your
I
time.
work in Jersey. He works in
I'll start with a good evening to everyone, and thank you for coming, as I said in the introduction. My name is Jennifer Reed. Together with my task force co-chair, Carrie Ryan, I want to welcome you to our 8th annual Lyme conference here at West Palm. It's an important night for us. It's the one opportunity when we get to see all of you and listen to the brightest minds tell us what's new in the world of tick-borne diseases. Not just the academic world. We're looking for information from the real world of patients and their physicians, laboratories on the front line of testing, manufacturers creating the prevention tools we need, and the therapeutic products that really do help support our healing. Last year, our organization, the Ridgefield Lyme Disease Task Force, met a significant milestone. It was our 10th anniversary. And for a lot of groups, when you have a 10th anniversary, that's a real cause for celebration. But I have to tell you that as leaders of the Lyme Task Force, we didn't celebrate. It was a moment for us to really do some serious reflection. We've met a lot of you during those 10 years. We've watched our families transition from being incredibly sick to having a lot of great success now. But it's been quite a 10-year ride. Yes, it was 2003 when our first selectman in Ridgefield, Marconi, actually called us and said, we have a serious problem here in Ridgefield with ticks, with Lyme disease. Would you two please put the task force together and do something about it? We really didn't know what we were going to do. We just knew that our families had been sicker than anyone could imagine, and they had taken way too long to diagnose the problem. We wanted to tell other families how serious Lyme can be and try and get them to avoid it. So we put together a group and we started reaching out to politicians, public health experts, and medical leaders who we thought would be anxious to partner with us in prevention and improved patient care. We traveled to Hartford and we went to Washington. We testified at hearings. We appealed for funding for this illness that so desperately needs money. And most importantly, we started talking to patients like you on a daily basis. I'm happy to tell you we found some true heroes along the way. One of them is here tonight. What we found most often was an answer we were sad to hear. The answer was sorry, no funding, no manpower, no time to help you. We heard your community has to really solve this problem on its own. So that's what we set out to do. One of the comments that we hear most often now from patients is, you've been really helpful to us, but it just took us too long to find you. What that means to us is it took too long for us to find other Lyme patients and to find the right doctors. We know that Lyme patients wander forever, trying to find appropriate care, looking for a diagnosis. Their illness gets so bad, the emotional, physical, and financial burden can be devastating. All when early treatment would have been enough. So this year, we're focusing on the two things that we think we do best. We're going to encourage prevention practices everywhere we can, and we're going to provide more patient support. It's a new initiative we're introducing for all of you called Lyme Connection. Our emphasis is going to be on creating improved communication, our new website, which debuted today at noon. We're very excited, and if all of you knew how we struggle with technology, you'd know what an accomplishment this is. My husband will vouch for that. This website will have a connection, not just to what we're doing, to what all the other wonderful Lyme groups and Lyme doctors and Lyme people are doing. It's a conduit to information, and we think that's what you all need. We have our newsletter. We want to do advertising. We want to do billboards. We want to do more community events. All the things that make it easier for patients to connect to one another in the care they need. But frankly, I'm here tonight really to ask you to help us. I don't want to just tell you about what we're doing. We cannot accomplish all this without more help. And so we're asking you tonight to please leave us your email. Please connect with us. Let us know what your skills are. Let us know what you want to do to help, because this is a far bigger task than a small group of women from Ridgefield can do. And I just want to also, I didn't have written here, but I just want to thank you to, I'm not going to mention everyone's names, but we have had some wonderful people. So I don't want to just ask for help and not say that we've had some terrific people step forward, and that's why we've been brave enough to make this announcement and to really take this on. We have a new woman, Annick Sullivan, helping with fundraising. We have Janet Gemon helping with our newsletter. We have some terrific volunteers who said, you know what, enough's enough. We really need to move this forward. So with their help and their support, we want to be brave in this next year and really take a giant leap. Please join us, leave us your email, and let us know that, you know, what you can do to move this into a new arena of patient care and support. So I just mentioned that in this journey, we've met a lot of people who gave us answers we didn't want to hear, but we've also read and learned and met some wonderful people who restored our faith in heroes. And one of them is going to come up here in just a few minutes, and I'd just like to introduce and tell you a little bit about her. For many of us, reading an article about Lyme disease was our first clue about this illness. I clearly remember being stunned by People magazine back in 2003 about a young radio dispatcher from Frederick, Maryland, whose doctors were baffled by his rapid decline. Finally diagnosing him with a degenerative illness that they assured him was going to kill him in 6 months. A relative suggested a trip to a Lyme disease specialist who found a bullseye rash, started him on some antibiotics, and the man's situation turned around. We got to meet him up in New Milford, Connecticut, actually right after this happened. He was so overwhelmed by the fact he'd been given a death sentence, and he had been through an article that someone he knew read had passed him on the advice to find a Lyme physician. As Lyme patients, we read these stories often. We're not just looking for stories about heroic patients, though, inspiring as they are, or news about the latest celebrity, although we know that is what brings much needed attention to our disease. We are desperate for stories that tell the truth of this disease to a world that just doesn't understand. Tonight we're honoring a journalist who did just that. Beth Pfeiffer is an investigative reporter working for the Poughkeepsie Journal, a newspaper covering the Mid-Hudson River Valley area in New York State. In August of 2012, Beth began a series of pieces called No Small Thing. Through this series, she explored a great deal about tick-borne illness. She interviewed patients, politicians, policymakers, and physicians, read scores of scientific studies, and synthesized what she found into an extraordinary series of articles. Recently, she received an award from the New York News Publishers Association for distinguished investigative reporting. The New York State Associated Press also awarded first place for continuing coverage to her series, No Small Thing. In addition to her professional accolades, she won the hearts of countless patients for elucidating both the political battles over Lyme treatment and the heart-rending struggles of so many patients who just really want to get well. Her coverage of the politics of policy and of current scientific evidence is the most comprehensive and balanced news coverage currently found in a news journal. When asked by our newsletter editor, Janet, in a recent interview how she has withstood the pushback from powerful dissenters, she said, "I'm comforted by the fact that everything I've written has been well documented, based on science, based on interviews with scientists, but also based on the experience of people out there. And I think that they really do deserve a place at the table and a voice in this process." So tonight we are awarding our first Courage in Journalism Award to Beth Pfeiffer to let her know how grateful we are for telling our story. Please join me in welcoming her.
2 years in college. Okay, good. Is that better? So I'm telling the story of a friend's son who at the age of about 17 began to exhibit these symptoms, which I think some of you could probably relate to when you know where this is going. And long and short, he flunked out of college, and one day he took a nap on the couch and they couldn't rouse him. One MRI later, some brain lesions, a few visits to various doctors, and he was indeed one of the lucky ones, so to speak, to be diagnosed with Lyme disease and treated for it. He got a PICC line put in. He had several months of antibiotics, and today he's a successful engineer and college graduate. That's the good news. The bad news is that the doctor who treated him will no longer do that. I've been told by many people who I've interviewed that he is an infectious disease doctor, and he repeatedly turns people away. So that's the challenge that I think we have here, you have here before you, at least one of many. And people ask me why I started covering Lyme disease 2 years ago. And my friend Daniel wasn't the reason why, because I had no context on where he stood in this whole picture back then. I started looking into Lyme disease because I lived in the Midwestern Valley, and Lyme disease was everywhere. I thought it was a minor problem at that point. I worried about it. I wanted to know why my dog could get a vaccination and I couldn't, why I felt comfortable letting him off in the field, but worried about myself and my grandkids. So that's really what sort of set me down this road. And today I've become something of a Lyme policeman. You know, always telling people to be wary of ticks. And in fact, I went to Wisconsin about 6 months ago to accept an award for something else I wrote about the developmentally disabled and Medicaid, very dry reporting kind of stuff. But I ended my little talk there with, did you guys know about ticks in Wisconsin? What your rate of Lyme disease is? So I get that in. My son is getting married a week from Saturday in a little grove of trees in the field across the street from my house. And the bride is going to walk down this grassy path. You can imagine what I'm thinking. Picking ticks off of her. And everybody else. But anyway, you know, I just, I guess want to say that as an investigative reporter, I approach things dispassionately. I want to know what the truth is. I care deeply about the truth. And I went into Lyme disease with a blank slate, really. I weighed the issues, and I concluded that there's a lot more here than is acknowledged and that meets the eye. The tests are poor. The treatment is lacking. They don't know how to count the cases very well, it seems. There's just a whole host of problems. And as it says up there, I read the science. I think I did the homework. And I think this disease is not getting the attention it needs. And I thank the Ridgefield Task Force and Karen, who I have somewhat regular, or had when I was writing intensively, contact with, because it's those kinds of things that sometimes get reporters on the path that you might want them to go down, and keep them there, because you become a source, you become somebody to help them out when they have a question. So I urge you all to not give up hope in the media. Write to a reporter whose writing kind of looks interesting to you and who seems maybe to care about these kinds of issues. Help out the cause. And I thank you very much for this honor. I thank you for caring. And I hope maybe in a year from now or in 5 years from now, I can unanimously passed a bill to protect doctors. We say we did this though it faces an uncertain future in Senate, so we'll see. But anyway, thank you. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you, Mary Beth. We are so fortunate that she stumbled across Lyme disease because the reporting she's done far surpasses anything that we've seen in a long time. She truly defines an investigative reporter, where so many these days don't seem to. Our first speaker tonight, we are very excited, and I'm very proud to be able to introduce her. She's a very dear friend and has been with us for many years, on a personal level and a professional level. She has been working with Lyme patients and supporting their families for over 20 years. She's a licensed clinical social worker. She has practiced in Brewster and New York and Southbury, Connecticut. Sandy has a very deep understanding of the effect that Lyme disease has on patients, on their families, on the whole, every aspect of what a Lyme patient goes through. And she is great at helping you figure out how to solve the problems as you run across them, whether it's with the schools or a spouse or a child, trying to figure out how to discipline a sick child can be quite a trick. She's written and spoken widely on Lyme disease. She's co-organizer of several Lyme disease conferences. She's a member of ILADS. Most of you probably know the International Lyme Associated Diseases Society. She's given several presentations there, as well as other conferences. She serves as Children's and Mental Health Editor for the Lyme Times. She is a consultant on the Lyme Research Alliance and the Lyme Disease Association. She's on the advisory board of the Lyme Research Alliance and is also an advisor to the Ridgefield Lyme Disease Task Force. Sandy?
Thank you, Kathy. Other speakers need to know that there's the carpet's over, there's a bump here on the floor. How many of you have Lyme disease in the room? Well, that's a fair number. How many of you have multiple family members with Lyme? And how many of you have someone you care about who is ill with Lyme? So I guess that says it all, huh? If you look around and see how many are affected just in this room. Each of us has his or her own story and his or her own Lyme journey. Mine began in 1984 with my first severe migraine headache. I went undiagnosed for 6 years, going from doctor to doctor seeking answers. And as I became more and more ill and more debilitated, I realized that I had been misled by the doctors that I had trusted. I felt very discouraged. When I was finally diagnosed, I thought the end was in sight. I had answers, so I would get well quickly. As many of you know, all too often, that is just not the case. Diagnosis turned out to be the end of chapter 1 of my journey. The road to recovery took 4 years. I realized that I was not only struggling with the pain and other symptoms of my illness, but I was surrounded by a strange world, the world of Lyme denialism. And I was now isolated from a lot of people and resources I once thought I could count on. Isolated by the ignorance in the greater medical community about an illness that I would soon learn was far more widespread than I would have believed. When Dr. Phillips talks about Lyme, he will be addressing the body. Dr. Bransfield will talk about the mind. To get ready for the complex incursion into the science of the body and mind, including the fascinating field of brain science, I thought it might be a good idea to look at the spirit. We might ask ourselves a few questions. What is it that informs our belief that we can get well? What is it that helps us get through each day with the hurdles we face in treatment? How do we deal with the isolation that comes from being a Lyme patient or a family member of one? What about when we encounter those Lyme deniers that seem to be everywhere? How do we focus on our needs and those of our families, getting past the anger on the road to healing? I'd like to propose perhaps a change of mindset as we pull ourselves out of the muck. We embrace hope, even if we feel as if we're hanging on by a thread. Hope is the foundation upon which I believe we need to base our journey, and the foundation of the work I do with clients. Hope that we will get well and our families will get well. Hope that there will be more treatments and eventually a full cure for everyone with tick-borne diseases. Hope that new doctors will take on the challenge of treating this disease. Hope that research will lead to a gold standard test and a safe, ironclad means of prevention. Hope is nurtured when we join with others with whom we feel safe. We have something now that we lacked back in 1984, when I had that first debilitating migraine. We have community. The Pleasant Valley, New York Lyme Disease Support Group, where I found my first Lyme home, was started in 1990. Still running, I understand it to be the longest continuously running Lyme disease support group in the country. The Ridgefield Lyme Disease Task Force has started 2 support groups, and they are excellent, even drawing people from out of the area to the safety of these groups. I encourage you to attend support group meetings, or if there isn't one in your community, start one, as Karen and Jennifer had done, and as Rachel Padillion had done way back in 1990. What a wonderful lifeline a support group can be. It is one place patients can go where they will be believed. Whether or not patients agree with everyone and everything about the group, it is for many patients a place where they feel safe. And safety is a foremost objective, particularly after the betrayals many, perhaps most of us have experienced prior to our diagnosis by a Lyme liver doctor. Now, are we victims of this disease, victims of the politics that surround it? My clients tell me stories about the victimization they experience as their doctors failed to diagnose them. Some deciding that the patient was malingering or had mental illness, or their family is dysfunctional in order for them, it must be dysfunctional in order for them to have had symptoms for so long. I had 6 years of that myself, feeling more and more trapped in my mind and body, with no apparent end in sight. But I kept going and kept looking for answers. As I finally started treatment and began the long road to recovery, I learned something about myself. Instead of giving up and remaining stuck, I was, in fact, far more resilient than I had realized. I might not have been able to hike up a mountain anymore or even read a book for several years when I was so very ill. But I could face each day with a drive to accomplish something. I could even laugh and feel joy. Things that I had taken for granted before I had become ill. Many of the stories I hear are heartbreaking, particularly where children are concerned. It's hard not to feel discouraged, hopeless, and helpless. Our self-confidence diminishes, as does our confidence as mothers and fathers when we are given these kinds of messages again and again. Then, when we finally find our Lyme doctor, to add insult to injury, we are chastised and berated by other doctors around us, many who refuse to believe that Lyme disease can cause such a vast array of symptoms. We are indeed victims of this systemic ignorance. However, we cannot be both victim and problem solver at the same time. Stepping out of victimhood, even if we can't let go, but decide to just put that injustice on the back burner, We can see where we are at this point in time and are now ready to problem solve. It is very empowering to make that choice. It may not be evident that problem solving is a spiritual endeavor, but according to what I know about some of the world religions, action in some form is part of what is expected of us, even if it is quiet action, like finding time for mindfulness or meditation. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam have rituals attached to them. And rituals not only remind us of our faith, but serve as organizing features of our lives, giving us a way out of the depth of despair we feel when life has dealt us a hard blow. Rituals can be very valuable. I encourage those who have been struck by Lyme to use those rituals, including prayer or meditation, in their daily lives. Some are too ill to go to their usual place of worship, but can take a few moments alone at home. I encourage you to find moments to be alone with your thoughts. Reach for healing in your own way, whether or not it is connected with an organized religion. Many Lyme patients routinely hold others in their thoughts as they are going through tough times, thinking of others who are also struggling. There's a concept in Judaism, lahavdil, literally separation. It informs us to separate the everyday from the spiritual. For some, it means Sabbath observance. For others, we can expand the concept to take those moments of time to reach for the spiritual, to reach for strength beyond the demands of our daily life. For Lyme patients and their families, life is very demanding, stressful, frustrating, and overwhelming. Private time for reflection can be a source of strength and healing. I'd like to mention a favorite book of mine, 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life by religion historian Karen Armstrong. A scholar in world religions, she looks at the 6 major faiths, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Confucianism, and demonstrates by quoting founders of these faiths how compassion is the cornerstone of all of these religions. Her contention is that our differences did not come from the founders, but came later, and as we go back to the source, to compassion, it unites us. It is thus better for us, better for those around us, and better for society. In this journey, I've been surrounded by compassionate people, 2 of whom invited me to speak today. Some engage in religious observance, while others do not. Compassion is certainly not the sole property of those who are religious, nor is everyone who is religious compassionate. But if we choose to be compassionate towards others and see people who have also made that choice, we are no longer isolated. We have a community. One step that struck me in Armstrong's book, as I was thinking of my clients with Lyme disease, is compassion for the self. In my practice, I see patients and parents struggling with guilt, regret, blame, and self-blame. We need to be kind to ourselves and realize that we did the best we could. By getting past the guilt, regret, blame, and self-blame, we are showing compassion to ourselves. I refer to my practice as guilt-free therapy and ask that my clients, young and old, try to sidestep guilt, blame, self-blame, and regret. None of us can do anything about what happened in the past. We need to find our way out of the deep well that we are in, with tick-borne diseases and manifestations of other related illnesses and medical conditions that you'll hear about from Dr. Phillips. Problems with the workplace, with schools, and with insurance companies. Only then can we engage in future planning. I don't say let go, as people used to say to me when I was ill. No one who said that seemed to give me a prescription for letting go. So it wasn't useful advice. I suggest that we don't talk about letting go, but instead putting it on the back burner of a very large range, with a lot of back burners, in order to make room for the internal resources we need to face today's problems and move forward. Let's look at decision-making as a spiritual endeavor. If a parent comes to me for an intake, for example, and has a child who is very ill with Lyme, there may be any one of a number of problems to be solved and decisions to be made about prioritizing these problems. The example I will give is education planning, identifying the supports and services a child might need in order to be successful in school. This is a very big subject, and we need to look at a lot of things: his medical needs, symptoms, especially sleep, fatigue, and alertness, what his day is like, including variability of day-to-day functioning. As I work with parents on problem solving, leading to decisions about next steps and beginning to implement those, parents feel less trapped and are often able to move away from focusing on the injustice of it all. And as their minds become clearer and they feel more in charge, their children can see it and feel safer as well. Chalk one up to the strength of the human spirit and a loss for the forces of hubris and greed that have caused the atmosphere of blind ignorance to exist and to impact our lives. What about spending a few minutes restoring your own spirit in a concrete way, whether you're a patient or a caregiver? Can you spend a few minutes by yourself? It's particularly hard when a child's illness presents with behavior problems, particularly severe ones. If there's another adult in the house, I recommend what I call Starbucks therapy. Go out for a cup of tea or coffee for 15 minutes, for half an hour, or take a walk on a concrete path in the park. You all know why I'm recommending that. If there isn't another adult and you cannot leave the house, leave the room for 15 minutes. Give yourself a time out. Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl, in his incredible book, Man's Search for Meaning, believed that having meaning in one's life is a source of healing. He survived Hitler's concentration camps with this idea in his head: